One of a few pending questions left for the Chicago Bulls in this free agent period is what's going to happen with DeMar DeRozan. It's already kind of been written that DeMar DeRozan isn't going to be returning back to Chicago, but the latest update paints a very bleak picture for a player in DeMar DeRozan that's not that bad. We're going to get into it all and more right after this.
Tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
I see red, I see red, I see red, I see red, yeah, I see red, I see red, I see red, I see.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. And since we're the number one spot, when news drops, we drops. As my dogs are back, what are y'all doing? Leo, if y'all knock over my lights, y'all both going in the cage. Move. Both of y'all. Stop it. Anyway, sorry, my dog's over here wrestling. But with that being said, we're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. And so because of that, when there's news, we drop. And Chris Haynes just came out with a report, several kind of Bulls tidbits in there. Well, the main one to take away from this, because you already know the Bulls are looking to move on from Zach LaVine. He did say that they're more focused on moving Zach than Lonzo Ball. That's not surprising. One of the more surprising things in this is that he mentioned that DeMar DeRozan may have to be forced to take a 1-year rental deal or the mid-level exception in this free agency just by the nature of how things have gone in this free agency period. Steve-O, when you hear that DeMar DeRozan could be forced to take a 1-year rental deal, how does that make you feel, bro?
I just need clarification, really. With us?
No, not with us.
Oh, okay. Damn. I didn't see that coming. I think he would have had a decent look contract waiting for him from another team. But when it comes down to the basketball side of it, like I said, DeMar is a particular player where the style of play has to fit with the team. And not only that, with him on the team, you're gonna have to sacrifice some things for his game because you already know you're not gonna get much on the defensive side with him. And the way he plays is like a old school 2005, 2006 offense. So you have to build the roster a certain way. And then you got to ask him, is he willing to come out and play on the bench or be a starter and stuff like that? When it comes to that, that's why I feel like it's coming to this point where he's only being asked or he possibly have to take a rental year to prove himself again. But it's not shocking when you talk about the basketball sense of it.
I mean, I would say this, like, I get it that DeMar DeRozan is a flawed player, but we can't act like DeMar DeRozan can't still put up points like he can. And so I personally do think this is a shock that he could be forced to take a one. I thought even if he did not return to the Chicago Bulls, I didn't think he'd have any problem finding teams, but it seems like in this free agency, one thing that stood out more than anything that I think, and Steve-O, you let me know if you agree with this, is that teams are prioritizing two-way players more than anything, that even some of the best one-sided offensive players in free agency this year. Everybody that you look at that's at that guard wing position are two-way players. Of course, some are stronger offensively than not, but like DeMar DeRozan, we know he's always been a flawed player, but this is still somebody who was top 20 in the league in scoring this year. And to say that he may be forced to take a 1-year deal at the mid-level exception, that's crazy.
I mean, is it? I mean, I feel like the league been going that way for a minute now. Because, like, to me, DeMar is just going to end up being another Melo. You have to conform your team around him a certain way for him to be himself. Yeah, he could get you 20, but the way you got to give him 20, it's at the detriment of everybody else.
Yeah,
and I think that's the thing. If he was able to be more off ball with it, if he was able to, we don't know, so I'm not gonna say if he's accepting a role or not. But if he's willing to accept the role of coming off the bench, then people saying, with this being said, with all this being said, that now that he's only being probably offered a rental deal, he wants to still be a starter. And he still want to play a portion of how he plays his game. And I don't think no team really wants to change their whole team for DeMar DeRozan.
That's fair. I mean, it's fair when you look at the fact and what we've seen a lot in the modern NBA lately. I would say this is probably a last 3 to 5 years thing, is that players will sign their extension, lock in their money, and then request your trade later. And DeMar DeRozan, of course, doesn't come from that era, even though he's playing in that era. And I think this is one of the situations that DeMar and his agent vastly underrated what the market was going to be like for him, because they should have taken that at 2 years, $40 million per. You should have taken that deal. And if the Bulls decide to go rebuild, force them to trade your ass.
Simple as that. And that probably would have worked out more in your favor than a rental deal with probably 2 to 3 teams.
Yeah.
So it's like that happens a lot. And it like I said, it just reminded me of Melo all over again, because you just had that little weird spot of like, dude, your production is not the same production for us to be making you the centerpiece of any team. So therefore, you gonna come off this bench, you gonna take less money, or what we gonna do? And then we seen that time, like, I don't think it's to the point where he will like be out the league for a year like Carmelo was.
Yeah.
But it's just very similar to Carmelo. They're very similar games, very high ISO, very the ball dominant. And that's just not the league right now. If you're gonna be that player, you have to be putting up high, near almost 30 points a game for us to be like, all right, we still gonna allow you to do what you're gonna do.
And Michael Carr says Chris Haynes reporting has been suspect for a while. Big misses. Yeah, but he's been on with some stuff. But even taking the Chris Haynes portion of this, if you're looking at teams in the NBA right now that could offer DeMar DeRozan more than the mid-level, the only teams that can do it are Orlando, Utah, and Detroit. That's it. Every other team in the league, you're either getting the mid-level exception or less than the mid-level exception. So even if you don't believe Chris Haynes reporting, you got to look at the market. And unless he plans,
it's matching up.
Yeah, it's matching up with that. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. Utah's trying to do some things. Maybe Utah does look at DeMar DeRozan. They have almost $40 million in cap space and say, hey, DeMar, we got you on 1 year, $20 million. But other than that, I mean, I could see him maybe wanting to go to Detroit. I mean, going to Utah, but Detroit, fuck no.
I was about to say, he ain't go no damn Detroit. That ain't happening.
Orlando,
nah.
But they already got their two-way wing in KCP. Right. Like,
and then they just read up Gary Harrison.
Yeah, so like
Harris, I say
Harris. Yeah, I know what you meant. The Spurs do have $15 million in cap space.
Now that I go back play with Pop to teach him. You go play with Chris Paul. I like that could be a team that's sneaky, because I already feel like that Chris Paul move was very underrated, because I think they're going to win way more games now with Chris Paul at the tutelage of the point guard. Add DeMar onto that, and we already know what he going to do in a Pop system. I'm not mad at him going to the Spurs.
Yeah, I mean, that could work, especially it seems like from their moves. I assume you signed Chris Paul that you're trying to make a push for the playoffs this upcoming year. I assume that. I could be wrong. And DeMar, who's been in that system, he did act. It's probably the most facilitating we've ever seen DeMar do in that system in San Antonio. So maybe there's a case to be made there. But then even if you want to extend it out to that, let's look at the teams that have the mid-level exception. Brooklyn still has their full MLE available. They don't seem to be going in a route that would make sense for DeMar DeRozan. They seem to be going the opposite way.
That's 100% rebuild.
Cleveland has their full mid-level exception as well. I don't necessarily see that. Houston could make some sense.
I like that.
Houston could make some sense. Indiana has their full mid-level exception.
He ain't going to Indy.
The Lakers still do. Well, they might. We don't know what's going on with the Lakers, how they sign certain players. Memphis has their full mid-level exception.
I said that last video. I like that.
And Toronto.
No, they're super rebuild.
Yeah, so unless it's a nostalgia act, like it's not that many options for DeMar DeRozan, and so that's why I said, and that's why I felt comfortable going live on this, is because even if Chris Haynes reporting isn't 100% legit, there's still enough conversation around here just looking at the reality of where the NBA is right now. There's not a lot of money out there for DeMar DeRozan.
And like I said, I feel like I've been saying it for a minute. I feel like with the last 3 years, we really thought our values of some of these players was super high. AC was the highest one. He had the highest value. And I told people that I don't think Zach value and DeMar's value is as high as everybody thinks it is. Because we at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure most GMs are looking at the Bulls like, bro, you just sat there with the same team that wasn't winning anyway for 3 years.
Yeah.
Why we want anybody from that? Like that's the thing where I look from another viewpoint of like what they're thinking, what they're coming from, and for what they've shown, especially with Zach being starting to. He wasn't injury prone the last 5 years, but he's starting to get the injuries are starting to ramp up. But besides that, the people we want to keep, we're not giving up that has the highest value, and the people that we's willing to give up value has sunken every year.
Yeah. So
it is what it is.
It is what it is. This is how quick the market in the NBA can change, because this is what I'll tell you. Had DeMar hit free agency last year instead of this year, the market would have been completely different for DeMar DeRozan. Completely
100%.
different. And as the stench on the Chicago Bulls is going to naturally wear on the stench of their players, but then also it's just like teams in the NBA, you gotta look at your free agency class as well when you're judging these things. And unfortunately, this free agency class offered a lot of players that were two-way players at DeMar's position, and DeMar just isn't that. On top of, even if he wasn't a two-way player, you don't hit threes in a league that we're moving to threes. So
no threes, no defense. Hell no.
Yeah.
Not happening.
So it is what it is, man. Yeah, that sucks. That sucks, bro. I mean, listen, and like I've said many times before, DeMar DeRozan is not a bad basketball player. He's a flawed basketball player, and he's somebody who could still be effective. I just said it. Top 20 in the league in scoring. He was number 17 in the league in scoring this year. And so for teams that need a score, but like you said, to Steve-O's point, yeah, he can score, but it's a very specific way in which he scores. So that also, you can even look at the scoring aspect and say, yeah, you can score and put up points, but we need points put up from three. You ain't bringing that.
On top of that defense, on top of you can be hurting the development of our young guys that we need to thrive in this league. Like, that's what I'm saying. It's more pros, it's more cons than pros when it comes to DeMar DeRozan at this 34-year-old point. It just is. Like, when it comes to certain players, when you're a high IQ, like if Luka's gonna play like this his whole career, there's gonna come a time when he's getting older and it's going to be hard to sign him, because with his playing style, if he's not putting up Luka-like productivity, and we already know he don't play defense, the modern game is only going to get even more modern, and it's going to evolve even more. If he ain't involved with it, he's going to slowly not be more. His value is just going to go down more and more. That's just how it goes, especially when you're a high ISO, high one-on-one player. That's just how the league goes.
The league ebbs and flows, and it seemed to be flowing away from DeMar DeRozan at this point, man. I really hope that DeMar DeRozan had a lot of fun on stage with Kendrick Lamar at the pop-out concert, because this offseason is taking all that joy right away from him real quick.
I tried to warn myself, stay your ass out here, because I'm out there, because I'm trying to tell you, ain't nothing here for you no more, and it's not much to come around too. So if anybody got your best bet is gonna want you, somebody in LA.
Yeah, that's probably his best bet to get the most money as well, like those LA teams. But I guess we'll see, bro. Like I don't wish anything bad upon DeMar DeRozan. Like nothing. I hope that DeMar does go to a team where, even if it is a 1-year deal, he can go back into free agency, recoup some of that money, that he has a really good season. I don't wish anything bad on DeMar, but this is part of why you see players now lock in their money and then they'll request a trade later or force the team to trade them. KD has done it. A lot of stars have done it over the time. Signed extensions with teams that they knew that everybody saw that they probably weren't going to stay with, and then they just waited on things to go the way that they went. You got to be smarter about it in nowadays basketball, bro. So,
yeah, it's a business. You got to learn the business.
Yeah, that's crazy. Crazy. Any last thoughts, Steve, before we get up out here, bro?
No, I was right. That's what I was saying.
That's funny. That's hilarious, man. But yeah, y'all make sure y'all stay in tune with us. Hit the subscribe button. You can follow us at Bull Central Pod on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for our mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We'll be back today. I mean, at the bare minimum, we'll do a recap video at the end of the day, but I got a feeling some news is going to come down the